And so, Mavuika banner is about to end, and the upcoming Lantern Rite New Year event is going to be coming with a lot of event for us to enjoy, but more importantly, our upcoming banner in the phase 2 is going to be happening very soon, in which we're going to be seeing our lovely Arlecchino and Clorinde once again, which we are going to be deep diving into it a bit today, as well as to have my opinion on Arlecchino and Clorinde at the current point to see whether or not they're still worth it for you guys to go for at this point in time. So first off, let's have a look into our lovely Arlecchino. Now, we have touched on quite a lot about Arlecchino before in some of my Mavuika video, which I've posted before. Certainly, I'm pretty sure you guys are still aware of Arlecchino's power level, and for me personally, in terms of her specific power level right now, even though compared to Mavuika, she will be technically one step behind if your Mavuika is invested. That is a quote, because Mavuika do kinda need to have Citlali and Shilonen to be very good and out-damaging Arlecchino teams, which makes it into Arlecchino teams is slightly easier to build, because obviously Mavuika is the character that requires you to have Natlan support character for her best damage output. Arlecchino, on the other hand, team diversity is a lot more versatile, especially when we have our newly support character Citlali and Shilonen to support her on that side if you do happen to already got those two characters. Now I'm going to be making a separate videos on some of the updated Arlecchino teams, which should be fun for us in later videos, but the point is that Arlecchino, I still hold very high regards for Arlecchino as a top tier pyro DPS character that most of us will still be able to use very well in the future to comes. Now that being said, there have been some questions of some people asking me whether or not they should still pull for Arlecchino if they've already got Mavuika, and so my saying to that is, if you've already got Mavuika and you're pretty much good to go on her, then Arlecchino is pretty much a preference character at that point. Because obviously, if you're investing into your Mavuika, then she will do absolutely perfectly. The only time when you're looking into a meta perspective and you're thinking about those two characters would be when you're using both Mavuika and Arlecchino on the same team, Arlecchino being the DPS hyper carry and Mavuika being the sub DPS support character for Arlecchino. However, at that point, most likely you're going to be replacing Bennett in your team. Now, if Bennett is being used on the other team, then that's totally fine within the Abyss. But if you're switching Mavuika in Bennett's place just for the sake of having those two characters on the same team, then meta speaking, obviously they're not going to be as good as having a Bennett's team. Therefore, I would say at that point it's much better for you to save your Primogems and wait for future characters, because I'm pretty sure down the line they're going to be really nice characters that you want to pull. Either that, or you're just better off trying to invest more into your Mavuika, either try to get Shilonen or Citlali if you haven't got them, or pull for more constellations, and Arlecchino is going to be a preference. But on the other hand, there are people on the video right now who already have Arlecchino and thinking whether or not they should still be pulling for Mavuika, or better off to get more constellation for your Arlecchino. Then I would definitely say focus more on the constellation part, because obviously Mavuika will require you a lot more investment than you either getting C1 Arlecchino or her weapon. Because while Arlecchino do have some of the best constellations in the whole entire game, the more constellations she has, the more significant increase to what her damage you're going to be having her. Overall, for a nice stopping point, you can just go to a C1 level Arlecchino and you're pretty much very good already. So that's something for you to take note of. Now, on the case of you haven't already got her weapons and you're thinking about whether her C1 or her weapon, then overall, her constellation is going to be getting you better value on Arlecchino in terms of damage wise. Furthermore, her weapon specifically is really much just made for her. It's very hard for different Poem characters to make use of Arlecchino weapons properly in terms of specifically the passive wise. So if you're looking into damage wise Arlecchino, then her constellation at C1 is technically going to be better for you to invest in. Moving on, we have Clorinde. As I've said before, Clorinde is a preference character for us to pull at this point, because while we've already got so many DPS characters out there which outshine Clorinde as a DPS character. However, I am not downplaying Clorinde, because she herself as an electro DPS character is still doing very decent damage. She has many team comps you can play in, and obviously some newer ones after the newer patch has came. So overall, if you do have a Clorinde on your account, you're still going to be able to make use of her very decently, especially you can still perform very well on a C0 level. You technically don't really have to invest too much into her, and she will still be able to dish out very decent damage. Now honestly, I don't think I have too much to talk about Clorinde specifically, other than as I've mentioned before, she's more or less going to be your preference wise. So if you are pulling for her, I do wish you good luck. And we're going to be touching on the more important cases on the video here, which is going to be looking into the banner. Now, we're going to be having our Lanyan, Chevrus and Rosaria being on the banner. This is one of the better 4-star banner we have seen in a great while. Because honestly speaking, Chevrus Constellation is still one of the best values out there, especially for free-to-play players. We have many 4-star characters that have nice constellation if you do have it, but especially Chevrus is a character that I feel many of the free-to-play especially use on an overload team. Because as long as you have a Chevrus, even if she is Z0, your overload team is going to be doing very nice number comparative to many other team comps you have on your account. Not to mention, if you do have a C6 Chevrus, oh my god, that's a huge increase to a specific free-to-play teams that you don't have to invest a lot in. So for a long time, as long as we see Chevrus, technically speaking, those banners are going to be very good. Now Lanyan is another interesting case. She's not the hottest character that everyone actually looks out for, and her kit I would say is definitely not the best, however not the worst either, because her kit has a lot of usage, especially from the fact that she provides you shielding and they can transform into specific elements, which leads to very situational shielding increase in terms of Lanyan's capabilities toward your teams. Now obviously, since she is a shielder and then moreover she's a Anemo character that can use Catalyst, her ability to have supportive elements for your team such as 4-piece PV and TTDS is something that many of you may want to consider whenever you're building a team. Now obviously we're not going to be touching too in depth into Lanyan here specifically in today's video, but she is a character that has a lot of potential. So you're pulling on the banner and you technically have Lanyan Constellation, especially whenever you hit her at a C2, her shielding capability is becoming very good, competitive to some of the best shielder out there that we have in the entire game. And then next to that we have Rosaria. Now we haven't been using Rosaria especially in a cryo team for quite some time. However, her capability is still pretty much there in terms of giving you a crit rate increase, and her constellation technically isn't that bad. But that being said, you know, Rosaria hasn't been around for quite a while, so it makes sense for her to be back on the banner right now. And of course, if you do have Rosaria constellation, it's technically really not that bad either, as overall, you know, Lanyan and Chevrus already made the banner to be pretty decently high value in terms of pooling. Next up are going to be the weapon banners. Now of course we're going to be having Arlecchinos and Clorinde weapons this point in time, which I would say is an okay thing, because if you're deciding to pull for Arlecchino weapons and you ended up losing to the Absolution, then that is still fine, because the Absolution is a pretty nice stat stick for most of your sword DPS character and they can make use of it pretty decently. On the other hand, you're trying to pull for Absolution, you lose to the Crimson Moon, however, then you know it's slightly less value, it's technically not that bad. So this is more or less, once again, for those of you who are trying to get for the weapon. And furthermore, looking into the 4-star weapon as well, I think the lineup is decently fine. The Light Roll is probably going to be the worst one, because you still will be able to make use of the Rain Slasher here and there if you look into it, or the Lithic Spear if you're using your characters in a leeway team. Obviously it's still going to be situational, but other than that, Sack Bow and the Wizards are still one of the top tier 4-star weapon out there that you would love to have refinement. So yeah, if you're going for the weapon banner, it's still completely okay, which leads us to some of the more important point that we usually discuss on the video, and that's going to be talking about the future banners. Now I know that you guys love Arlecchino because she's absolutely fantastic as a character, or you know, you like Clorinde because she's hot. So do keep in mind that again, Hoyoverse have already teased multiple characters down the line in terms of, I think, the next 6 months properly, if I remember correctly, in terms of what they mentioned. And technically speaking, we already know that Mizuki is going to be on the next patch, which confirms that, you know, a new character already comes, and that would probably lead to the upcoming patches as well. Now some of the character that is expected to be coming pretty soon is, you know, who knows, most likely it's going to be Skirk or Ian-san. Those are some of the more popular character that many of us has been looking forward to. Now obviously I can't talk too much about Mizuki because her kit ain't official at the current point. However, you know, she probably not going to be a character that focus too much on the meta wise. If any of us are more toward in terms of loving her designs and pull for preference wise, I think that's more of the things that she may be heading towards with. However, there are going to be reruns right next to us as well, and that's most likely going to be definite case, and it is rumored to be Ryo, Citrin, and Furina at the current point. Now, Ryo is probably going to be more or less preference wise, you know, he's still a pretty good cryo character if you want to look into it. Citrin is basically a dead character at this point in time in terms of, you know, even preference wise case, it's very much Primogems wasted if you do pull for her. However, I really want to emphasize Furina because she's really much a special case. Furina is a really powerful character, and she's been in most of the team comps building, and that is still going to be the case down the line regardless of whether you like it or not. I feel that many of the Furina cases are a lot easier to use, especially compared to Kazuya's character. Obviously, Shilonen is technically going to be a lot easier in most cases nowadays, but Furina's value of sub DPS and supportive element toward your team cannot be denied, especially when you're trying to invest more into Furina, right? If you do happen to have her either her C1 or C2, she becomes absolutely so powerful that most of your team will just literally have Furina all the freaking time. Now my Furina is at C3 and I'm just loving using her all the time. She helps so much in terms of sub DPS damage. Now obviously I'm not saying that you need a C3 Furina. However, if you do decide to invest into a Furina constellations, it will definitely help her out, because what I always say is that Furina is technically not a complete character at the C0 level. You do need to wait quite a bit of times in order for her to reach that maximum fanfare stack in order for you to get the maximum damage bonus from her, but it is mitigated if you do have her constellations, which, you know, in terms not only help her doing more sub DPS power for you, but also helping your teams either way. Other than that, you know, there is the Chronicle banners as well, not just, you know, right next to Arlecchino and Clorinde, right? There are many characters that you may be expected to be pulling, which obviously I can't talk everything within one single video, which is why I've already made a specific video on Chronicle banners before. If you guys want to watch more in terms of Chronicle banners, don't forget to look into it. So guys, that's everything I have to say regarding this video. I hope it was very helpful to you. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comment sections and I or some lovely other Genshin players will get to you there. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate you guys staying with me to this part of the video, guys, and with that I wish you a super day and I'll catch you on my next video.